Chapter 1. Chapter 1. Bestowing a name, Li Hao. Throbbing, intense pain. Li Hao attempted to open his eyes, but found it extremely difficult. Finally, a crack of light slowly opened up before him. The dim glow revealed the towering ancient halls, solemn and majestic, with a rugged, dark, golden, dragon-scaled carpet spread out before his eyes. At the top of the steps at the end of the carpet sat an awe-inspiring giant, whose gaze was as piercing as torchlight in the dark night, with a kind of mesmerizing brilliance. Where is this? Wasn't I just playing a game? Oh, my phone battery died, and I was just about to charge it. Li Hao's mind was somewhat sluggish, hazy, observing his surroundings in a daze. Damn, I didn't fall asleep holding my phone again, did I? But this doesn't seem like a dream. 19 years old, champion of the armies, he beheaded enemies at the royal court, annihilated great demons, and quelled a century of chaos in Kangzhou. Such a hero is not only the sorrow of the Li family, but also the pain of the countless subjects of the Great Yu dynasty. Marquis of Xingwu stepped forward to receive the decree. A commanding voice boomed from the Great Hall, deafening. Li Hao struggled to look up and saw many figures in official robes standing solemnly on both sides of the carpet. Was this the Imperial Palace? The Great Yu dynasty. There seems to be no such dynasty in history, right? As Li Hao was confused, a towering giant suddenly stepped out beside him, straight as a spear. Seeing only his silhouette, one could almost smell a lingering scent of ominous bloodshed. Today, we confer upon the ninth son of the Li family, Li Junye, the title of first-class Zhenguo Marquis. He is to be promoted to Great General, given a burial in the Imperial Tomb, awarded 10 carts of ancient treasures, 3 Yu Dragon orders, and 10 dew of gold. As of this day, the entire nation shall mourn for 3 days, and the court will abstain from meat for 7 days as we pay tribute to the valiant soul of the Zhenguo Marquis. Such lavish rewards astounded everyone in the Great Hall. Only 19 years old, and already anointed a Marquis and a General. While ordinary Marquis were conferred titles like Marquis of the North or Marquis Pingyanan, the title of Zhenguo to denote a Marquis was an honor of eternal renown, unprecedented and perhaps unrepeatable for future generations. After all, to be ennobled as a first-class Marquis at 19 was incredibly prestigious. Your Majesty, on behalf of my 9th brother, I received the decree and thank Emperor Yu. The towering figure, straight as a mountain, a lance, knelt on one knee, and though his deep voice lacked much joy or excitement, it carried a faint sorrow, hoarse with strain. This is what your Li family deserves. It is I who owe you. Marquis of Xingwu, that is your child there, isn't it? I wish to bestow a name upon him. Are you willing? Without any merit, I dare not accept such a royal favor. The young men of the Li family are all heroes of Great Yu. As the Zhenguo Marquis laid down his life for the country beyond its borders, and your son was born to this world, it may be the cycle of heaven's will. Heaven has taken away my beloved general and bestowed upon Great Yu another fine young man. I now confer upon him the name, Hao. I hope he will uphold the aspirations of the Zhenguo Marquis to purge the world for Great Yu and unify Donghuang. Your Majesty, this name is too noble. This subject fears it's too great an honor to bear. No worry, the sons of the Li family are worthy of such honor. A single name, Hao? Li Hao was taken aback, then almost laughed. What a coincidence! It happened to be the same as his own name. Wait a second. The child they were talking about couldn't be me, could it? Li Hao looked down and was instantly stunned. There he was in swaddling clothes, his little hands and feet adorably chubby, being cradled by a beautiful woman in military armor. Bring forth the dragon blood jade pendant for Hao, commanded a voice. Soon Li Hao watched as the pale-faced eunuch with a solemn expression approached, carrying a dark red jade pendant etched with dragon motifs. A delicate, fair hand gently took it, and the beautiful woman holding him whispered softly, "Thank you, Emperor Yu, for your generous gift." What is going on? Li Hao blinked his eyes. Is this a dream? Suddenly, waves of dizziness washed over him and he could hold on no longer and fell asleep. Qingzhou City, the Divine General Mansion, the Li family. The Great Yu dynasty had 5 divine generals, and the Li family was one of them. With 9 generals from a single family, all loyal and courageous, the Li family was the nobility among nobles in the Great Yu dynasty, bathed in endless glory and wealth. But beneath this boundless prosperity were the lives and blood of kin. 6 of the 9 sons of the Li family had perished. The youngest Marquis had joined the military for only 2 years and had just been promoted to colonel when unexpectedly, during the Battle of Kangzhou, as a mere colonel, he led tens of thousands of cavalrymen straight to the enemy's royal city. He broke through 15 cities and slew 100 demons. With achievements worthy of 10 generations, he became the 6th member of the Li family to die a heroic death in service to the nation. Now immortalized in the Temple of Valor, he was revered and remembered by all. At this time, about 3 months had passed since the conferment of the Zhenguo Marquis. Over this period, the people of the Li Mansion had gradually emerged from their grief, with a little less gloom on their faces. And today, there was a happy event at the mansion, which brought rare liveliness to the place. Elite families and high-ranking officials from various states either came personally or sent representatives to Qingzhou. A procession of luxurious and noble carriages parked in front of the Li family's divine general mansion, drawing countless passers-by to stop and look. Today was the 100-day celebration for the 7th young master of the Li family, the son of Marquis, of Xingwu, Li Hao. This favored child of heaven, born with a gold spoon in his mouth, had been granted a name by Emperor Yu upon birth, a name known throughout the land. And as he was from a family of divine generals, there was no doubt that he would have a place in the world's future. As the saying goes, it's best to curry favor early. Within the divine general mansion, in a room of the mountain and river courtyard, Li Hao cuddled in the arms of his mother, Ji Qingqing, curiously observing the hustle and bustle outside. In a matter of months, Li Hao had come to understand that he was not dreaming, but had transmigrated. This was not a historical dynasty, but the ephemeral realm. There were martial artists, great demons, as well as swordsmen and temples. Fortunately, the Great Yu dynasty was powerful. Demons were forbidden, and those daring to infiltrate the country were few, so the people lived rather well-off lives, not to mention someone born into a top-tier family like himself. The days ahead were full of hope. However, actually, your mother didn't wish for you to be born into the Li family. Did you know that? Outside, the noise was lively and boisterous, but Ji Qingqing in the room wore a worried expression and suddenly said in a low, mournful voice. Li Hao looked up at his mother in surprise. At this moment, his vocal cords were not fully developed, and he couldn't speak. Even if he could, he would not be able to ask why, as that might scare the young lady to death. However, although Ji Qingqing appeared quite young to him, being in her early 20s, but the meticulous care and warmth over these past months had made him somewhat dependent on this mother figure. Actually, your mother had already thought of a name for you. It was Leping, Li Leping. Mother only wishes for you to be happy and safe, to grow up healthy, unifying the world and such. That's the dream of the royal family, not the Li family's dream, and even less so of mine. Ji Qingqing murmured softly to herself. The sycophantic faces of the nobles outside did not make her feel proud or happy, but rather, she found them somewhat glaring. Emperor Yu named you in the hope that the Li family would revive after the death of your 9th brother. The name carries the expectations of the Dayu royal family, and also serves as both an expectation and a burr for the Li family. She said no more. This weighty expectation, placed on her own child, made it easy to imagine the more favors received today, the greater the pressure to be born in the future. Li Hao looked at the sorrow between the young lady's brows. At this moment, she was no longer the awe-inspiring 7th lady of the Divine General Mansion, nor the iron-faced female general who struck terror on the battlefield, but simply a mother. Without the ability to speak, he simply buried his head more firmly against her chest, trying to convey his reassurance through his body heat. Feeling the movement in her arms, Ji Qing looked down, saw her child's long eyelashes and lovely face, and her eyes softened in an instant. She held Li Hao and shook him gently, her delicate hand soothing the infant as if to comfort her own heart. No matter what, your mother will help you. Your father has already stepped into the immortal realm, and there's a chance you will inherit that power within you. Even if your talent in martial arts is mediocre in the future, with the power your father has passed on, it will be enough for you to catch up to the pace of your forefathers when they were young, and you will not fall behind your peers. No matter what happens in the future, Mother will always stand behind you and will not let anyone harm you. She whispered to herself, "The 100-day feast is about to begin. Why are you here?" At that moment, the robust Marquis of Xingwu, over, his palm gently wrapping around Ji Qingqing's waist, and said in surprise, "What are you thinking about? Not happy?" Of course not. Ji Qingqing packed away her emotions, looked up with a smile, and didn't share her true thoughts with her husband. She knew that the men of the Li family were of a single-minded nature, taking pride in dying on the battlefield, and her own tender feelings for her children would ultimately not surpass the 1,000-year glory of the Divine General Mansion. Have all the sisters-in-law arrived? They have all arrived. They are just waiting for you and Howard. The Marquis of Xingwu glanced at Li Hao and rubbed his little head, but his rough palm was like a blade, making Li Hao roll his eyes. Can't this pig-headed father be a little more gentle? Ji Qingqing, holding Li Hao, entered another room full of ladies and madams from the various courtyards, and at once a babble of voices surged up. Oh my, Hao is so handsome, even more so than Jing when he was a child. Yes, Xianxia, look at your little brother, isn't he adorable? Yo-yo, he's staring at me with his little eyes. Apart from the ladies of the various courtyards, their children were also present. The youngest, only 1 or 2 years old, clung to the legs of the adults, their curious eyes round and shiny as they looked at Li Hao in his swaddle. The older kids, around 5 or 6 years old, appeared mature beyond their years, not mischievous at all, standing to the side, seemingly bored, yet not daring to leave rashly, showing little interest in this new little brother. Come on, Howard, let Fifth Lady hold you. A beautiful woman picked up Li Hao, her face full of affection, and then exclaimed in surprise, "Oh, is Hao hungry? He just ate this morning." The beautiful woman had no doubt, and, thinking Li Hao was hungry, didn't worry further after hearing Ji Qing's response. She simply pinched Li Hao's little cheek gently, chuckling merrily. The other madams also crowded around to tease Li Hao, and when the timing seemed about right, they began to present their gifts one after another. Ji Qingqing hurriedly declined, but the gifts were firmly thrust into her hands. These were treasures money couldn't buy. Today, at Li Hao's 100-day feast, the gifts received had filled half of the mountain and river courtyard, all of them rare and precious treasures. Among them, a bracelet made of jade-like material was placed on Li Hao's tender little wrist by the woman holding him, Fifth Lady, who said it had nourishing effects on the spirit. Li Hao, who had been troubled by the chattering noises, felt somewhat drowsy. However, upon wearing the bracelet, he felt strands of coolness flowing from his little hand into his body, making him feel much more spirited indeed. The sleepiness was swept away, and his thoughts became sharper. He squinted his eyes, and suddenly, blurry characters leapt before him, compared to the muddled blurriness when he had just transmigrated. As the months passed and he grew, day by day with his brain developing, these characters slowly became clearer. And now, as if a nearsighted person had put on glasses, everything became crystal clear. These clear texts turned out to be a character panel that Li Hao was very familiar with. The reason he was familiar with it was that he had seen this thing in his previous life. But not in reality, it was in a game. When he was crossing over, Li Hao happened to be bored and had casually downloaded a casual mobile game from the leading store, and this panel was the character panel in the game. However, now there was the additional attribute, Cultivation level. And the age and name fields also switched to his current real status instead of that perennial online nickname, Passed with the Wind. As for the skill points at the end, he found them even more familiar. Unlike the mainstream adventure and card games that required intense grinding, this game's main selling point was light entertainment. There was no battle system, no combat equipment, just fancy and flashy fashion and various arts and leisure activities, such as chess, fishing, painting, carving, and so on. You could even watch movies or play poker. The serious type, the only thing missing was monsters you couldn't fight. Improving different arts would accumulate skill points, and each skill point could directly enhance your artistic level, unlocking more gameplay. Unexpectedly, after crossing over, he had brought this thing with him. Wait a second, this thing wouldn't expect him to become a full-time lifestyle master like in the game, would it? Li Hao was somewhat shocked and speechless. This was the ephemeral realm. What use was there for art? I need to fight. Report. While Li Hao was immersed in shock at the panel, a shrill military report suddenly came from outside the courtyard. A Li family elite soldier rushed into the courtyard, quickly shattering the peaceful and joyful atmosphere within. He knelt on one knee before the Lord of Fazi Camp, urgently reporting, "My lord, Northern Yan has erupted into chaos. Prince Pingcheng has colluded with demons and slaughtered Mofeng City on the border, as well as the surrounding 8 towns. Emperor Yu has issued an edict ordering you to set off immediately to quell the rebellion." He gazes of all the power brokers and the ladies of various courtyards within the courtyard were suddenly focused on the Lord of Fazi Camp. Their expressions varied. Li Hao came back to his senses, somewhat astonished. It had only been a few months, and there was already another war? The smile had faded from the Lord of Fazi Camp's face, replaced by an aura of stern killing intent. His eyes were like cold lightning as he stared at the soldier before him, then slowly stood up. Seeming to sense something, he looked up at where Li Hao was, his gaze meeting his wife's. The murderous intent in the man's eyes suddenly dissipated, and he showed a look of regret. "Ching Ching, please accompany Hao for his 100-day feast. I will be back as soon as I can." Ji Ching Ching's face turned slightly pale as she handed over Li Hao to the 5th lady by her side. Looking at the baby in the swaddling clothes, Ji Ching Ching felt an illusion, as if the child was seriously looking at her too, and there was a hint of reluctance in his eyes. She was momentarily dazed, thinking it was just an illusion after all. The child was only a few months old. How could he understand separation? "Mother will be back soon, you must be good." Ji Ching Ching gently stroked Li Hao's forehead, her eyes also full of reluctance. But then she resolutely walked towards the Lord of Fazi Camp. "This trip is fraught with danger. I will accompany you." The Lord of Fazi Camp immediately shook his head. "You stay here and take care of Howard. He is still young and needs you." "I am a senior general in the army. The commander is in place. How can I be absent?" Ji Ching Ching's eyes were grave. "Prince Pingcheng is crafty and cunning, has been biding his time for many years, and has suddenly made a move. I'm worried there might be more to it. It's better if I accompany you." The Lord of Fazi Camp stared at her, knowing his wife's stubborn character, sighed, and no longer tried to dissuade her. "All right, then please take care of Howard, ladies and sisters. We will be back as soon as possible. You must be careful." The lady of the house approached, her face showing concern. "You can leave Howard to us without worry." "Thank you, sister-in-law." The Lord of Fazi Camp smiled briefly, then turned and called out, "Prepare the horses! Fazi Camp's elite soldiers, assemble and follow me." In the general's manner, actions were swift and decisive. They were accustomed to mustering for battle, and the couple quickly led a team of elite soldiers out of the mansion, rushing overnight towards the Northern Yan frontier camp. That place was where the Li family had battled for many years, and they were most familiar with the terrain, demons, and opponents. It was the Li family's area of defense. It was because of this that Ji Ching Ching was determined to go along. There were too many prying eyes in the courtyard, and there was something she did not publicly say. Why did Emperor Yu receive news of the rebellion in Northern Yan before they did? Early winter, Qingzhou City saw its first snowfall. More than a year had passed since the 100-day feast, and Li Hao was now a year and a half old. His parents were still on the battlefield in Northern Yan and had not returned. According to the secret reports from the Li family army, it seemed that the war was in a stalemate and might turn into long-term combat. At this time, the 1.5-year-old Li Hao stood alone in the mountain and river courtyard, hands clasped behind his back like a little adult, gazing at the goose feather, big snowflakes falling from the sky. He wondered how the girl who became his mother was faring in Northern Yan. The house servants and maids around him were already accustomed to the young master's behavior. Although Li Hao had just turned 1 year old, the name of a prodigy had already spread within Li Mansion. Ever since he was able to make noises at half a year old, Li Hao had never wet the bed again. While other children were crying and shouting, the little master was already using simple words like eat and poo to alert the wet nurses to feed him and take care of his bodily functions. By the age of 1, while other children were just learning to walk, young Master Li Hao was already running around, pointing at words in books, asking the servants to read to him, and learning to recognize characters. He didn't cry or fuss, was intelligent and sensible. That was the impression the house servants and maids had of this young master. "Second lady, the young master is over here." At this time, a graceful and elegant figure of nobility entered the courtyard. Seeing Li Hao standing alone in the snowy yard, the beautiful woman's eyebrows shot up, and she immediately scolded, "How are you taking care of the young master? Are you not afraid of him freezing to death in this heavy snow?" The surrounding house servants and maids were so frightened that they jumped, hurriedly kneeling down. The head steward among them nervously said, replying to the second lady, it was the young master himself who wanted to watch the snow. He asked us not to disturb him. The young master is still a child. Is everything he says correct? If he told you to die, would you die?" The second lady's face showed anger as she quickly walked to Li Hao's side, picked him up in her arms, and started patting away the snow that had accumulated on his head. Even if the young master wanted to watch the snow, couldn't you have held an umbrella for him? Dressed so thinly, I think you don't want to live. The group was terrified into a cold sweat, not daring to even breathe deeply. "Second mother, don't blame them. It was I who told them not to come over," Li Hao said, seeing the situation and feeling helpless. Since his parents had gone to the northern Yan battlefield, he had been alternately looked after by the ladies of various courtyards. Each lady treated him extremely well. The second lady, Lu Yuerong, in front of him, had a gentle disposition, but she was incredibly strict with the servants. Without saying so himself, the house servants attending to him could not avoid a good scolding. Upon hearing Li Hao's clear and coherent words, a flicker of light flashed in Lu Yuerong's eyes, followed by a light snort. "For how? Air's sake, I'll let you off this time. If I catch this happening again, I will let you taste what it is like to spend the late winter in a cold lake." After speaking, she turned her face and said to Li Hao with a gentle smile and laughter, "How-er, second mother will take you to eat something tasty. You too, why didn't you wear more? Even with Emperor Yu's gift of the dragon's blood jade, what if you get sick?" Prattling on and on, her words full of concern, she carried Li Hao out of the courtyard. Li Hao was already used to it and let second mother hold him in her embrace. Soon after, Liu Yuerong carried Li Hao to the Ch.1 courtyard. In the courtyard, a child around 4 or 5 years old was swinging a wooden sword. His form so true to life that the swordplay seemed rather skillful. This was the second lady's only child, Li Qianfeng. Despite his young age, his gaze held concentration and determination. Next to him, a burly middle-aged man was instructing, nodding frequently. Li Hao knew this was one of Li Qianfeng's 7 military tutors, specifically teaching him sword Dao. Upon seeing the second lady's arrival, the burly man hurriedly bowed respectfully, his gaze sweeping over to Li Hao in her arms, knowing that this was the Kailan child named by Emperor Yu. Perhaps after the talent is tested, he might not be inferior to his own pupil, Li Qianfeng. The child practicing swordsmanship did not get distracted by his mother's arrival, continuing to focus on his training. Lu Yuerong didn't interrupt, giving the burly man a slight nod before carrying Li Hao to a pavilion nearby. On the pavilion table were exquisite fresh fruits and flaky pastries. Lu Yuerong held Li Hao, feeding him while watching her son practice swordsmanship, the light in her eyes flickering, and before long, she had become entranced, forgetting to continue feeding. This is the Li family's finest swordsmanship. Endless sea, isn't it? Li Hao opened his small eyes wide, looking on curiously. It was said that this second lady's child had his bone age measured and possessed an exceptional talent. Li Hao wondered what it would be like when his own bone age was measured in the future. In the courtyard, the 5-year-old Li Qianfeng practiced with precision and discipline. Even though he was only practicing the movements, his posture was correct, earning frequent nods of approval from the burly man, prompting him to praise the child. Yet no joy appeared on the child's face. He remained fully focused. Again! Although the burly man praised him, his teaching was extremely strict. The child began the routine all over again, his movements smooth, clearly having mastered them by heart. Li Hao watched, entranced, when suddenly, a line of text popped up before his eyes. "You have learned the rudiments. Would you like to record it?" What? Li Hao was astonished, and instinctively he chose yes. Recording successful. At that moment, a panel popped up in front of him. Name, Li Hao. Age, 1 year. Cultivation level, mortal. Sword Dao, not entered, can add points. Skill, endless sea. Tide, not entered. Forbidden. Mastered artistic skill. Chess Tao. Chess Tao. Level 1, 82 500ths, can add points. Chess Catalog Collection, 0. Skill Points, 1. For more than a year, Li Hao had been trying to figure out his panel, but due to his young age and not wanting to appear too miraculously precocious, his opportunities to test things were limited. Fortunately, he had access to a chessboard in the mansion. When he was half a year old, he lay on the chessboard and played by himself. The wet nurse and maids taking care of him saw that the young master seemed to like the chessboard toy and were only too happy to have some relief. It's better than him crawling all over the place. In his explorations, Li Hao was amazed to find that by playing chess, he could, like in a game, gain chess experience and easily move up levels. In reality, to improve one's chess level was incredibly difficult. It required focus, talent, and hard work. But Li Hao himself was only an amateur in Chess Tao, not even ranked. Now, just playing simple games on the chessboard, he was able to gain experience points. To go from unranked to level 1 in Chess Tao, only 100 experience points were needed. From level 1 to 2 required 500 points. If it weren't for the maids occasionally checking on him, which made Li Hao cautious about not being too obvious, he would have farmed even more experience by now. There was no helping it. Although these maids knew nothing of Chess Tao, they at least had some common sense. If they saw the not yet one-year-old Li Hao arranging the chess pieces all in their correct positions, it would inevitably seem peculiar. But at this moment, apart from Chess Tao, the panel had added 2 new attributes, Sword Dao and Skill, which were not there before. Especially the prompt behind Sword Dao made Li Hao both curious and excited. Could it be that Sword Dao, like Chess Tao, could be directly improved through skill points? Without much thought, he chose to add points. Chapter 3, The Abandoned Divine Blood. Translator, 549,690,339. When consciousness began to float, a surge of information suddenly flooded into his mind. Li Hao clutched his head, feeling a swelling in his brain, as if it were about to burst open. This caused him to show a look of pain on his face. Howard, what's wrong with you? Lu Yue Rong noticed something was amiss with Li Hao and was startled. She quickly showed concern. Li Hao clenched his teeth tightly. The tumultuous thoughts in his mind gradually calmed down, and Li Hao then realized that his mind was filled with many pieces of knowledge about swords. It was as if he had been practicing swordsmanship day and night for 2 or 3 years. Damn, this headache, it's just like when Chess Tao leveled up. Li Hao rubbed his head, panting heavily. He was still too young. His brain was not yet fully developed, and the vast information from Chess Tao and swordsmanship was a terrifying shock to his fragile brain. Without speaking, Li Hao was trying to calm himself down. Is Lin Shui sick? Lu Yue Rong stroked Li Hao's forehead but felt no fever, and she couldn't help being puzzled. By this time, Li Hao had fully recovered. He looked at his second mother's astonished expression, pointed to his mouth, and mumbled in his baby voice, "Bit my tongue." Lu Yue Rong was taken aback and immediately breathed a sigh of relief and rolled her eyes speechlessly. Li Hao got away with it and didn't pay her any more mind. Instead, he secretly started checking his own panel. Name, Li Hao. Age, 1 year old. Cultivation level, mortal. Swordsmanship, level 1. Skills, endless sea, tied, perfect, forbidden. Mastered arts, Chess Tao. Chess Tao, level 1, 82 500s. Chess manual collection, 0. Skill points, 0. Li Hao was somewhat shocked. The skill points at the end were gone, but his swordsmanship had really started at uninitiated and become level 1. And the skill below, endless sea, tied, had changed from uninitiated to perfect. Li Hao had heard the military teacher who taught Li Chenfeng say, every skill is divided into 3 levels. Initiation, dexterity, and perfection. Initiation means being able to proficiently perform a whole set. Dexterity means that in addition to proficiency, one can also apply it flexibly, having fully understood it at one's fingertips. When facing different situations, one can counter moves spontaneously rather than mechanically repeating set moves. As for perfection, it means the skill has been completely mastered, able to be used as naturally as moving an arm, even if performed in reverse, effortlessly, without any flaws exposed. Unless there are inherent flaws in the skill itself. It is said that above perfection, there is an even higher realm, Such a realm could even compensate for the flaws in skills, increasing their power even further. And now, after his swordsmanship had advanced to level 1, Li Hao had reached perfection immediately with the first layer of Endless Sea sword technique. This would require at least a decade of hard training to achieve. The current Li Qianfeng, it was said that he had practiced Endless Sea for half a year and had already initiated the first layer of Tide, considered a swordsmanship genius. So, what did that make him now? A monster? Seeing that his second mother wasn't paying attention to him, Li Hao's gaze returned to the courtyard. At this moment, the children in the yard were still practicing swordsmanship, but through Li Hao's eyes, it no longer appeared as impressive as before. Instead, at a glance, he could tell the others' techniques were immature and their postures stiff. If it were someone who knew how to use a sword, they would only need a light tap to knock the wooden sword out of their hand. Not bad, said the burly middle-aged man, quite satisfied with Li Qianfeng's performance. Excellent foundation and very good comprehension. In 2 more years, he should be able to reach dexterity with this first layer. You should know, Li Qianfeng is still only a child right now, his brain not yet fully developed, so this was already quite remarkable. Time passed. Li Hao watched while eating snacks fed to him by his second mother. Gradually, he began to feel a hint of fatigue and boredom. He yawned, nestled into his second mother's arms, and slowly closed his eyes. Something seemed to pass by in front of his eyes, but Li Hao had already fallen asleep. Hearing the faint breathing in her arms, Lu Yue-rong looked down, a hint of complexity flashing in her eyes. But when she raised her head to look at her son practicing swordsmanship in the snowy yard, the complexity in her eyes vanished, and her gaze returned to calm. She stood up, carrying Li Hao out of the pavilion, back to her own rear courtyard's bedroom. She gently placed Li Hao on her own bed, tucking him in carefully. Her movements were gentle, as if she were his birth mother. Li Hao, half asleep, felt his body being laid down and became slightly more alert. He felt warmth in his chest, a slight heat emanating from there. It was the dragon blood jade pendant given by Emperor Yu, which he wore at all times. This was also the reason why he could stand in the snowy yard without feeling the slightest cold. Just as Li Hao was about to turn over and continue sleeping soundly, he suddenly heard a low voice coming from outside the room. "Did you really feed that thing to the child?" A voice of an unfamiliar man. "It has come to this. I had no other choice." That was his second mother's voice, but it wasn't soft and affectionate, only as cold as one would be to a house servant. "You saw it too, how hard my son is striving and that he is a once-in-a-century talent. The people from Mount Wuliang have already come to see. And when Qianfeng turns 6, they will take him to Mount Wuliang to cultivate. When his divine blood awakens in the future, inheriting the power passed from his father, he will certainly become famous throughout the world. I must pave the way for him." Li Hao slightly opened a sliver of his eyes, the drowsy fog in his mind filled with confusion. Who is second mother talking to? "We still don't know the child's talent. This action is too reckless," the deep-voiced man sighed. Outside the door, a brief silence ensued. Then, Lu Yue-rong's voice rose, colder than before, with a hint of mockery. "As parents cherish their child, they plan far ahead for them. I wouldn't have wanted to do this, but the wooden heads of the Li family are beyond help. Blame the child's father if you must. How exceptional was that Marquis of Xingwu? Others may not know, but I am well aware that he had stepped into that realm by the age of 23. Which means there's a not insignificant chance that his child might also awaken the divine blood." "What?" The deep-voiced man responded with shock. 23 years old, and he stepped into the 3 immortal realms? That's right. The Li family ancestor was a founding divine general of Daiyu with a powerful bloodline. Father succeeded in the ancestor's will, and he was the same, she confirmed. In the previous generation, apart from Qianfeng's father, the Marquis of Xingwu was a monster, as were the 3rd, 6th, and 9th brothers, especially the 9th, who was even more terrifying. Fortunately, he died early and left no descendants. The 3rd brother's wife is always by her side, and being a girl, she will marry off eventually, so it doesn't pose a problem. The 6th brother also entered the 3 immortal realms early, but that was after his marriage. Lu Yue-rong said coldly, "The only one who can compete with Qianfeng is this child. Otherwise, why do you think Emperor Yu bestowed his blessing on him? Even if his martial arts talent turns out to be mediocre in the future, with the awakening of the divine blood, he can contend with the top geniuses." Outside, silence fell again. The deep-voiced man sighed lightly. Since the lady has made such a decision, I shall say no more. You needn't worry, this medicine comes from Mount Wuliang. After being taken, it leaves no trace to be tracked, nor does it cause any pain. I've even coated it with sugar. It won't taste odd. Although he is still young, it won't leave any deep memories since children have too many sweets as it is. Besides, if it turns out he cannot awaken the divine blood in the future, it can't be determined that we were behind any interference. Anyone in the Divine General Mansion could be a suspect. Moreover, the bloodline of that realm isn't guaranteed to awaken 100% of the time. Maybe the child simply didn't have it in him. At this, Liu Yue-rong chuckled scornfully. Thank the Northern Yan Wars for this. Ji Qingqing, so deeply loyal to the Marquis of Xingwu, followed him to the battlefield, providing us this opportunity. Otherwise, if we waited till the child grew a few years older and they returned, martial guards would be secretly watching over him, making it difficult to act. The man did not respond but sighed softly. Before long, their footsteps gradually faded away. Inside the room, Li Hao was now fully awake, his mind reeling, disbelieving. Second mother was going to harm him? The seemingly protective and caring attitude of every day, was it all false? Li Hao was reluctant to believe it, but reality lay stark before him. Although he didn't understand what divine blood was, Second Mother, wishing to clear a path for her own child, perceived him as an obstacle and thus chose to destroy him. Li Hao's expression was grim, his fists clenched tightly. The tender smiles had lulled him into a false sense of security. If this was how Second Mother behaved, what about the others? Who else was sincere? He had been here for only a year and a half, but being cared for in turn by these ladies, Li Hao had developed some emotional attachment. Now, however, it all felt like an illusion. Was this the internal strife of an ancient noble family? He touched his body with his small hand. Besides a slight warmth in his chest, he felt nothing else. And even this warmth was from the dragon blood jade pendant. His mother had said that he had his father's strength within him, but now it was gone. Li Hao clenched his small hand tightly in the dark, vowing to exact revenge in the future. Spring turned to autumn. In the blink of an eye, Li Hao turned 3. Nowadays, he spent most of his time in the mountain and river courtyard. Being careful with the food delivered by the ladies from various courtyards, he sometimes pretended to be picky and refused it, acting like a capricious child. Gradually, the house servants in the courtyard came to understand that the young master was extremely fussy about his food and drink. 3 years old. In the Divine General Mansion, this was a crucial age. Ordinary families start their martial arts training at 7 or 8 years old, or even in their teens. Some, already set in their physical development, could have latent talents yet might not achieve great success due to missed opportunities during the best training period because of their family circumstances. As a martial arts household, the Divine General Mansion had the most rigorous training methods, with children of the clan laying their foundation from a young age. Foundation establishment at 3, blood melting at 4, bone testing at 5. By 6, it was time to formally train. Not a moment wasted. On the path of cultivation, thousands strive to cross, and an early lead often means leading at every step. Cultivation aptitude was to be tested at the age of 5. If the bones were well developed and the marrow rich and solid, one could begin training after bone testing at 5. But with the profound depth of the Divine General Mansion and their belief in not rushing, they prescribed formal training to begin at 6, allowing the body another year to grow and solidify for smoother future cultivation. Even someone with exceptional talents like Li Chanfeng followed this, able to train after bone testing but still only ascending Mount Wuliang at 6. Even if practicing swordsmanship daily, it was still just the basics to develop a sense of martial arts, not considered real cultivation. And for those with average talent or delayed development, they couldn't start training even at 6, needing more years of growth, which could be at 7, 8, or 9. However, with countless precious medicines in the Divine General Mansion to enhance martial arts qualifications, the mansion's worst case still began cultivation at 8. I heard that this case was due to premature birth and prenatal injury, leading to such a result. Chapter 4, Levels 3, 6, and 9. Translator, 549,690,339. Ender tells, on a sunny day, The Divine General Mansion arranged for a military strongman to come to the Mountain River courtyard to help Li Hao with his foundation establishment. This was a short and stout middle-aged man with dark skin, yet he wore a flowing blue robe. His name was Xianxia, sounding like that of a girl. Li Hao later called him Uncle Lin. Coming back with Xianxia was a little girl. She was about the same age as Li Hao, just 2 months younger.